I wanted to know if you could kind of summarize Bianca's arc throughout these 3 films, what would you say would be the most important component that she has brought to this franchise so far?
Oh gosh, that's such a good question. I think something that I think a lot about is the images that we ingest as people. And I think the opportunity in films like this, in the context of franchises and big studio Hollywood movies, is the amount of eyes, the amount of intergenerational eyes on something. And I think something that feels very unique about Bianca is the ways in which she upends this idea of the role of a girlfriend, a spouse, a love interest. And I feel like she also does something really interesting in terms of how we think about love, for example. And I have been thinking a lot about like this idea that we tend to think of love, and Hollywood movies have a lot to do with this. We tend to think of love as an affliction, as like a feeling that we just have and we act out of that feeling. And I think an interesting way to think about love also is love is a choice, is an active choice that we make, that we're struck with the affliction, the feeling, but the act of love is actually what we decide to do with the feeling. And I think there's something really special about the way that Bianca loves. The way that she is really selfless, the way that she sees Adonis in his full humanity and wants him to be the best expression of self, but the way that she also decides to love herself, which is to identify her boundaries, to be like, this actually isn't good for me and how I need to be loved. And that model of like active love of 2 people participating in the choice of it, I think is so cool. And that to me is a really strong contribution that she makes to this, to films that are really about ultimately relationships.
Yes. And what was it like diving into Bianca the mother, which is something we've seen her in mama bear mode a lot in this movie. Her and Adonis, conflicting on some aspects
of parenthood.
What was it like diving to that aspect of the character, which was new for this film?
It was a pleasure. I remember when he was like jokingly, Mike on the second one was like, or after the first one, we knew we were making the second one, he's like, all right, he's about to get her pregnant. And I remember at the time being like, kind of like, I don't know if I want that, because I don't want her story to be completely sidelined by motherhood. I think what I couldn't have imagined then is that their daughter would come in the form of a performer like Mila Davis Kent, and also the kind of vital representation that she provides, but also just how special it is to support the emergence of a new talent, and a talent that is as singular as she is. And so I think that was really, really a joy. And then I also think, I love in the context of the films that I do to get to explore things that I'm wrestling with. And I think as a woman, you do go through periods where you're really trying to understand your relationship to motherhood, And so to get to do that in this film, I think is really, really beautiful, and something that I talked about with Mike is this idea of getting to present a woman who is so happy to be a mother and also can talk around all the other facets of her life that maybe she's still trying to figure out how she feels about. And I think we don't always allow women to talk about that candidly, because the idea is if you are a mother, that's the biggest accomplishment you could ever do in your life, and that should be just like satisfying and be enough. And I think that's a really unfair thing to task women and mothers with. So I really, it was really rich to get to explore all that in this, and also just to hang out with Mila and eat snacks with her. It was so fun.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much. Can't wait for everyone to see this movie.
Thank you.
I've been thinking about a lot of the themes of Adonis's journey in the movie, where he's like reached a certain point, and there are certain things that come with being at, this height in his career. And I want to know, as, being at the helm of this movie, do you think that your own career and trajectory in Hollywood has any similarities or even mirrors that of what Adonis is going through in this movie?
Yeah, I think that was one of the reasons why I felt really comfortable telling the story, and why I felt I really wanted to, direct this movie. The only character that I had a chance to play 3 times, over the last like 9 years or so. And last 9 years of my career has been, it's been on the rise as well. So I kind of knew the things that Adonis would be going through, and the kind of obstacles that he might be facing. So you know, I think one of the beautiful things about acting, you know, and directing, like you can, you know, you're infusing a little bit of yourself into these characters, and you're trying to blur those lines, and you're also working out some of your inner shit. You know what I'm saying? So to be able to do that, you know, in a way that felt honest and you know, and truthful, it was awesome.
And though this movie is the third film, it also kind of doubles as an origin story, which is kind of interesting because like this late in the game in the franchise, but we're learning so much that we didn't know about Adonis. So I think that was so important to have that element in this film as well.
Yeah, that was by design. I wanted to make it feel like an origin story, you know, a sequel and a trilogy all in one, you know, to really like, you know, move the franchise in a new direction, you know, and really, you know, they make it about Adonis's life and his story and his family, you know, and his experience. I think was really important to figure out what happened in those transformative years as a youth, you know, with his first relationships, his first friendships, his first heartbreak, his first betrayals, his first, you know, childhood trauma that we all have as humans that we carry with us. Now, whether we address them or not, or we ignore them or act like they don't exist is another thing. And whether we face them, you know, is a totally different thing as well. So I wanted to make Adonis feel uncomfortable, but also make him feel like an underdog and face him with these challenges of what it looks like to talk and not talk, you know, about how you feel, your emotions, apologizing, you know, holding yourself accountable, you know, the people around you holding yourself accountable. And there's all things that I feel like, you know, somebody around his age at this point in his life and career that he would be going through as well.
Yeah. And one thing that's so unique to me about this film is the fight sequences. I think that's something that's like so unique, not only from the Creed films, also the Rocky films before. I thought there's such a uniqueness and standout qualities of them. And knowing that you're such an anime fan, I felt traces of that throughout these, you know, sequences and the way they played out. Did you have any specific references when it comes to anime and how those fights were displayed on screen?
A little bit, but not really. Not specific, like, okay, shot for shot or whatever. But I think, you know, pulling from like, you know, Dragon Ball Z or Hajime no Ippo or, you know, My Hero Academia or Naruto is like, you know, the essence and the feel of a lot of these anime are the same. You know, their principles and their themes are very similar. But then also visually, you know, adapting, you know, anime into live action doesn't really work well at all. So finding the right balance, you know, and the right subtlety to be able to make it make sense and make it feel honest, I thought was, you know, was key. And I think we built it off.
Yeah, I would agree too. Well, thank you so much. I can't wait for everyone to see this movie.
My man.
All right.
Appreciate it, bro.
I read a headline recently that said Jonathan Majors is in his villain era with this movie, and then of course with all the king of it all with Marvel. So what do you think it's about these types of roles that you think may challenge what you've done so far in your career, where it tends to be these antagonists, but also as we see an antagonist here that has a lot of depth and like more to what we have thought when we first saw Dame on screen?
Yeah, I like to think that it doesn't challenge the work I've done before, but complements it in a way, that this is another side of the instrument, you know, another side of the coin, as it were. You know, these stories, these guys, you know, the Kang of it all, the Damien of it all, these guys are amongst us, you know, and I'm just excited that folks are, you know, checking them out and seeing seeing that and seeing the complexity of it, you know, seeing the gray area, and ultimately it kind of makes people feel okay because we all kind of have that gray area, you know, we all have those moments of, is what I'm doing wrong, or is it just not okay, or am I doing the right thing? You know, all these things, and it makes you uncomfortable to think about it. You know, but I think the thing about both these guys, these characters, is that the amount of heart they have in trying to achieve what it is they want, good or bad, you know, however they fall, that can be honored. You know, when you see someone trying so hard to achieve something that they sincerely, good or bad reasons, sincerely want. You know, it's a bit of a mind trick, you know. Yeah.
Yes, and I know that Michael has been, very open about being an anime fan, and how like that has kind of inspired some of the fight sequences within the movie. And I know I read that your Ebony shoot, one of the outfits was sort of inspired by One Piece.
Right.
Are you a fan of anime, and do you think that kind of had any sort of inspiration behind some of the approach here as well?
I absolutely did. I just know because Mike is always dealing with his anime stuff, always. You know what I mean? Which is quite adorable, really. Like, oh, it's cool. So that's a huge part of his day to day and his subconscious. He may disagree with that, but it seems to me that he has a real passion for it, and so I was the beneficiary of that vision. I think I was doing some stuff I didn't know the reference to, but he's the director, so I said, okay, yes, sir, and that worked out. Yeah.
And I also had the pleasure of seeing Magazine Dreams not too far removed.
So Magazine Dreams,
after Creed, and interesting because you're you have this boxing move, but then you're also playing a bodybuilder, and like I kept getting through lines in my head through your character in Magazine Dreams, through this film as well. And I just wanted to know, like, when you have new roles that come up, is there anything specific that you seek out in characters, or do you think there's something about the characters that seek out you when you're reading these scripts?
A bit of both. You don't know it unless it's there, right? And so, looking at a script, like when you put a song on the radio, or you listen to the radio and the song comes on, and you just driving along and you look at the radio like, ooh, like it's doing something, right? That happens in the script for me. I'll be reading the script, and I'll get to a line or a sequence or a stage direction, and I'll go, wicked. You know what I mean? Yeah. Enough of those, and I'm in. You know what I mean? And that's me seeing something. And also, it's a relationship. Like the character will take something from you, and it will give you something, and I look for that, and the bigger the challenge, just now these days, at 33, my appetite's pretty, ravenous. So I go, all right, I'll take that. I'll try that, Yeah.
I love that word, ravenous appetite at this point.
Yeah.
But thank you so much. I really enjoyed this conversation and cannot wait for more people to see this film.
Wicked, brother.
All right.